What seemed like a simple job turned into a nightmare. I was paid to transport a group of kids to Rick Harrison's mansion, the famous star from Pawn Stars. But what I discovered there made me instantly regret it, and I can never forget. A terrible secret hidden behind the golden gates. What I witnessed completely changed the way I see the world. You won't believe what I found. Stay tuned to the video to learn more details. If you think what I discovered is truly shocking, leave a 1 in the comments. If not, comment 0 to share your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support us and not miss any more exciting videos in the future. Enjoy the video and leave a sub to support us. Chapter 1. A simple errand turned terrifying. That morning, the Las Vegas sunlight stretched across the dusty streets, casting a pale golden hue on the windshield of her old van. The woman, her name would soon be forgotten, received an unexpected call from a small event brokerage company specializing in providing transportation for large charity events. The voice on the other end of the line was gentle and polite, promising a generous fee for a simple task: transporting a group of children from a youth center to a charity gala held at Rick Harrison's private mansion, the famous figure from Pawn Stars. Everything seemed perfectly legitimate. She received a confirmation email, a pre-signed contract, and even an invitation bearing the logo of a well-known Las Vegas charity organization. There was no reason to doubt. No one questioned when the money was transferred directly into her bank account just minutes after she agreed. Everything was as easy as a school field trip. Upon arriving at the youth center, she picked up about 8 children, all under 12 years old. They wore clean uniforms, chatting excitedly like any group of children eager for a fun outing. One of them, she remembered vividly, had messy blonde hair and curious eyes, constantly asking, "Where are we going, miss?" She simply smiled, gripping the steering wheel. A fleeting sense of unease passed through her, but it was quickly dismissed by her reasoning. It was just a charity party. What she knew about Rick Harrison was limited to the image of a friendly man passionate about history and antiques. How could anything be wrong? The road to the mansion was on the outskirts of the city, far from the main roads, hidden behind high walls and dense foliage. As her van neared the gate, a man in a black suit and sunglasses stepped forward to check. He asked no questions, merely glanced at a list, nodded, and gestured for her to proceed. As the van passed through the iron gates, the atmosphere immediately shifted. There were no welcoming banners as she had expected, no buffet tables, no game booths, nothing like the charity parties she was used to. It was just a vast, silent estate, with the old mansion standing alone like a giant beast, asleep. The man signaled for her to stop at a separate garage. When she reached for the door to help the children out, he raised his hand to stop her, coldly saying, "You stay in the vehicle. We'll handle the rest." His tone, with those words, sent a chill down her spine. From inside the van, through the windshield, she saw 3 other men in black suits emerging from the mansion. There were no tools in their hands, no name tags, no clipboards, no welcoming smiles, only cold gazes and clenched fists. Each child was led through a side door at the back of the house. There was no music, no laughter, just an eerie silence that enveloped everything. A wave of intense unease surged within her. This was not the charity party she knew. The atmosphere here had a strange scent, the smell of absolute control, of things that were not to be questioned. When the last child disappeared behind the door, She felt as though she had just signed their fate. A cold emptiness pierced her chest, leaving her breathless. She quickly reached for her phone, intending to call the event organizers for confirmation. But there was no signal. Not a single bar. It was as if this place was swallowing all connections to the outside world. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, sitting in silence, her heart pounding. Part of her wanted to start the engine and drive away immediately, but another part, a stronger part, urged her to stay, to uncover the truth behind those walls. A moment later, the same man returned, handing her a thick brown envelope. No words, no smile. He simply nodded, signaling for her to leave. Inside the envelope was a large sum of money, many times the originally promised amount, a reward for silence, and also an unspoken warning that she knew too much. The woman started the car, leaving the estate in silence, but her mind was no longer at peace. The eyes of the children, especially the blonde boy, haunted her thoughts like a constant reminder that behind that perfect facade, something was terribly wrong. And she knew, with every fiber of her being, that she had made the biggest mistake of her life. A mistake she would regret forever. Chapter 2. The smiling faces behind closed doors. The small van rolled slowly away from the iron gates, leaving behind the magnificent mansion bathed in the Las Vegas sunlight, like a suffocating illusion. The woman gripped the steering wheel tightly, but her mind was a battlefield of conflicting instincts and fear that grew stronger with each beat of her heart. A reckless thought surged within her. She had to go back. She couldn't just leave. She couldn't pretend everything was fine when her heart was screaming otherwise. Ignoring all the warnings in her head, she drove into a small alley behind the mansion's fence. From there, she could peek into the backyard through a gap between two old wooden planks. And in that very moment, she witnessed something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. The backyard of the mansion was nothing like the charity parties she had known. There was no lively music, no cheerful laughter of children. Instead, there was a group of adults standing in a circle, dressed in elegant dark suits and lavish evening gowns. They looked like ordinary party guests, until she noticed their smiles. They were not the happy, warm smiles of parents watching their children play. These were forced, strained smiles, hiding a vague emotion somewhere between disdain and possession. A type of smile she had only seen in movies, where people were auctioned off in underground bidding wars under dim lights. The children stood separately in a corner of the yard, their eyes confused. No one approached them. No one spoke to them. Only the occasional glance from the adults, as if they were evaluating unwrapped merchandise. She recognized Rick Harison among them, the man famous from the TV show she once loved, now dressed in a black suit, standing in the middle of the crowd, smiling faintly, with a glass of dark liquid in his hand. A wave of dizziness washed over her like a sudden violent flood. Every cell in her body understood that what she was witnessing should not exist. Not in this world, not in broad daylight. She continued to observe, her heart pounding. A tall man with graying hair approached a little girl. The girl, no older than 8, instinctively recoiled. The man bent down, whispered something, and then chuckled softly, an action that froze her blood. Though she couldn't hear clearly, she knew. Somehow, she just knew. A faint sound behind her made her jump. She spun around. A sleek black SUV was parked not far away. A man in a white shirt and dark sunglasses leaned against the car, arms crossed, staring directly at her. No expression, no wave, no approach. He just stood there, as if subtly reminding her that she was in the wrong place, at the wrong time. She understood immediately. There was no more time. She turned, scrambled into the van, and sped away as if demons were chasing her. Her heart pounded heavily, each beat like the tolling of a death knell echoing in her mind. Once she was far from the mansion, she pulled over to the side of the road, resting her head on the steering wheel, gasping for breath. There was no doubt anymore. Those children weren't invited to a party. They were brought there like merchandise, and she, with her own hands, had contributed to something horrific. In those silent moments, the memory of those forced smiles, the furtive glances, and the way the adults looked at the children as if they were objects replayed in her mind like a broken film reel. She knew she had to do something. She couldn't remain silent. She couldn't turn away. But deep down in her heart, she knew that the forces behind this silence were stronger than anything she had ever imagined. And once she had entered this labyrinth, there would be no easy way out. Yet amidst the fear, a spark of determination flickered. She had to uncover the truth, even if the price was her own destruction. Chapter 3. The Hidden Area. No one talks about the late afternoon sun casting long skeletal shadows of the trees across the ground. The woman, her hands trembling but her gaze now hardened, returned to the mansion the next morning, this time with a plan in mind. Reckless and foolish, but she had no other choice. She disguised herself as freelance cleaning staff, taking short-term hourly jobs, something that could easily slip through the gaps in the mansion's lax security system. Partly due to luck, partly because this place, despite its sophisticated organization, still had cracks born from complacency. Inside the mansion, the cool air from the high-end air conditioning system enveloped everything, but it couldn't hide the suffocating feeling weighing heavily on her shoulders. The polished wood-paneled walls, the glittering crystal chandeliers hanging overhead, the thick plush carpets underfoot, all exuded an almost unreal, refined extravagance. But it was this very perfection that amplified the growing unease within her. While cleaning the east hallway, she noticed something strange. A short corridor led to a gray metal door, completely out of sync with the surrounding interior design. No nameplate, no markings, it simply existed. She asked another staff member, pretending to be innocent, "Where does that door lead?" The person glanced at the door, then immediately turned away. Their face hardened like stone, quickly avoiding her gaze, leaving behind a cold sentence. "Don't ask about the East Wing." It wasn't advice. It was an order. But it was that very silence that ignited a thirst for the truth within her. She knew she had to access that area at any cost. She devised a risky plan. She would wait until the main shift ended when most of the staff dispersed to prepare for the evening's new party, then sneak in. Leave no trace. Attract no attention. Her heart pounded like a drum as she approached the gray door. She turned the handle, locked, but right next to it was a keypad, a simple electronic lock, nothing too high-tech. She held her breath, observing closely. On the edge of the keypad, faint fingerprints remained on the keys 1, 3, 5, and 8. Using her quick thinking and a bit of luck, she tried possible combinations. The third time, 1358. Click. The door opened. A narrow, long corridor stretched out before her. The dim yellow light cast uneven patches of light and shadow on the rough concrete walls. The glossy extravagance of the upper floors had disappeared. No more expensive paintings or soft velvet carpets, only starkness and darkness remained. She stepped inside, her footsteps echoing between the thick walls, as if each step was awakening something ancient and dangerous. At the end of the corridor, another door appeared. This time it was a heavy steel door looking like a bank vault, but what made her freeze wasn't the door. It was the faint sound seeping through the crack, the muffled sobs of children, the stifled moans like suffocated pleas. A chill ran down her spine. She had to bite her lip to prevent a sob from escaping. Unbelievable, unwilling to believe, but undeniable. A small metal plaque was affixed above the door, bearing only one line. Restricted area, authorized personnel only. Just then, from behind her, she heard footsteps. Not the hurried steps of someone passing by, but slow, heavy, deliberate steps, like a predator approaching its prey. Without thinking, she rushed back into the corridor, hiding in a nearby storage closet, her heart racing in her chest. Through a small crack in the door, she saw two men in black suits walk by, whispering to each other in a strange language. One of them held a list, his sharp eyes scanning the hallway. She hugged herself tightly, holding her breath. The strong smell of disinfectant filled her nostrils, making her nauseous. She realized she was no longer an invisible stranger. From the moment she entered this area, she had become a variable, a threat. And in this world, variables don't last long. Waiting for the corridor to return to silence, she found her way out through a side door, following an old alleyway, then rushed to leave the mansion grounds. But she knew she had barely escaped. And the children behind that steel door, they were still there, trapped in the darkness where no one could hear their cries for help. She clenched her fists, her eyes burning with a mixture of despair and anger. No matter the cost, she swore she wouldn't let them be forgotten. Not this time. Not under the false lights of Las Vegas. Chapter 4. The Ledger. After the terrifying night of escaping the mansion, the woman found no comfort in sleep. Even with her eyes closed, the images of the pitch-black hallway, the stifled sobs of the children, and the chilling sense of being hunted clung to her mind like ghosts. The next morning, as the faint light of Las Vegas filtered through the thin curtain, she knew she couldn't give up. Silence now meant complicity. A part of her, the weak part that longed for safety, whispered that she should forget everything. But the other part, the part that knew doing the right thing sometimes meant self-destruction, won out. She decided to return, this time not just to observe, but to gather evidence. She prepared meticulously. A new phone, a mini camera hidden in her jacket pocket, a rough map of the mansion from memory, and most importantly, a plan to infiltrate the restricted area without being detected. Returning to the mansion in the afternoon, when the crowd was busier, she blended in as a temporary logistics assistant. The old uniform she bought from a nearby thrift store proved to be very effective. No one paid her any attention. Her goal was clear: find specific evidence to prove what she had witnessed. She navigated the familiar hallway, avoiding attention, and stood before the gray door leading to the east wing for the second time. By luck or fate, the keypad lock remained unchanged. The door creaked open with a soft groan. She slipped inside, moving like a shadow. This time, instead of heading straight to the steel door at the end of the hallway, she noticed a small room hidden in the corner. The door was slightly ajar, no warning signs. A careless mistake or a trap. She took the risk. Inside the room, there were no lights, just faint light filtering through the crack in the door. But under that dim light, she saw an old wooden table cluttered with papers, ledgers, and a small safe. In the corner of the table, a thick ledger lay alone, its worn leather cover and spine frayed from time. Her hand trembled as she opened it. Inside, the handwriting was sloppy yet cold, detached. Dates, codes, quantities, descriptions, all carefully documented as if the items being traded were nothing more than commodities. She skimmed through the entries. March 15th, 2024, 6 units, Group A, delivery confirmed. April 1st, 2024, 5 units, Group B, awaiting payment. April 25, 2024, 8 units, Group C, special request, confidential. No names, no personal information, just group codes. But at the end of each line, one letter stood out. R.H. Rick Harison. There was no doubt now, this ledger was not just a simple record. It was an indictment, tangible evidence of a network operating in the shadows, where people were listed like commodities, bought, sold, and paid for. She flipped through the pages. Some pages were clipped with anonymous invoices, foreign bank codes, and transfer orders to offshore accounts. An underground world ran smoothly, silently, and ruthlessly, hidden beneath the glitzy surface of Las Vegas. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the hallway. There was no time left. She quickly took photos of each page in the ledger with the mini camera hidden in her jacket, her fingers swiftly gliding over the fragile pages. The door creaked open. She barely had time to hide behind a filing cabinet before the door swung open. A guard entered, his flashlight sweeping across the room. Her heart nearly stopped as the light passed over her. Fortunately, or by some small miracle, she remained hidden long enough. When the guard left, she quietly slipped out, clutching the photos she had just taken. Evidence that could shatter the world if exposed. Once she reached a safe area, she finally allowed herself to take a deep breath. But she knew that from that moment on, the game had changed. She was no longer an outsider. She had become a witness, the most dangerous kind of witness. And in a game where Rick Harison and people like him set the rules, witnesses were never meant to live long. Chapter 5: The Point of No Return. She left the mansion with unsteady steps, the phone in her pocket feeling as heavy as the weight of the world. The photos, the evidence she had just gathered from the ledger, burned in her mind like a wildfire. There was no time for fear, no room for hesitation. She knew that from the moment those photos were saved to the device, she had crossed a line that no one was ever meant to return from. In the darkness of Las Vegas, the neon lights flickered brightly, as if mocking her. A small woman daring to challenge an empire hidden beneath layers of extravagance. She found her way to a 24/7 cafe, where the crowd was large enough to make it difficult for anyone to approach her. She sat near the window, her back against the wall, eyes scanning the entrances and exits. A survival instinct had formed within her in just a few short hours. She opened her laptop and began composing an email. Who should she send it to? She couldn't trust mainstream media, which could have long been bought off. She couldn't trust the police, their uniforms easily bought with money and power. Only a few independent journalists remained, those who had reported on scandals buried by the powerful. She chose one, attaching all the data. Her finger hovered over the send button. She closed her eyes, feeling her heart pounding in her chest. A weak voice echoed in her head. Once you expose them, they will hunt you down. She knew, but she also knew that silence meant complicity. She hit send. The email left the inbox like a bullet fired from a gun. It couldn't be retrieved. It couldn't be stopped. In that moment, she saw them. A sleek black SUV was parked at the corner across from the cafe. 3 men in black suits stepped out, moving with the synchronized precision of a professional hunting team. She had no time left. She quickly packed up her laptop and slipped out through the back door of the cafe. No running. Running would draw attention. Just walking briskly, blending into the weekend crowd heading toward the bars. But she could feel them getting closer. The streets of Las Vegas, usually bustling and noisy, had now become a maze of searching eyes, of invisible hands waiting to strike. At an intersection, she took a risk, darting into a narrow alley where the neon lights didn't reach. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew they were near. Not from the sound of footsteps, not from words spoken, but from the cold, primal feeling of prey, knowing it has been locked into the crosshairs. A shadow flashed at the entrance of the alley, then another. There was no turning back. She pressed her back against the cold brick wall, gripping the strap of her backpack as if it were her last talisman. In the chill of the desert night, she felt a hot bead of sweat roll down her forehead, and in that moment, she understood. Not everyone is chosen to see the truth, and even fewer survive to tell it. But she had chosen. She had walked down a path from which there was no turning back. No matter how her fate would unfold, she knew that a part of the truth had been freed, no longer locked behind steel doors, no longer drowned in the darkness of silence. A small, fragile spark of hope, but enough to make her clench her fists, raise her head, and face the approaching footsteps. If tonight was to be her end, she would not kneel. She would fight with her last breath for the truth, for the children, and for the remaining shred of conscience in this decaying world. Epilogue: Ashes under neon lights. The woman disappeared as though she had never existed. No missing person report, no brief mention in the local newspaper, just a name swept away by the wind amidst the bright streets of Las Vegas. In some hidden corner, her old backpack was found, torn and scattered on an empty lot on the outskirts of the city. Inside, there was no laptop, no evidence, only a crumpled piece of paper with the hastily scrawled words, "The truth is not a luxury. It's a debt we must repay." No one knows what truly happened that night. The overly curious, independent journalists, unknown bloggers, quickly backed away after receiving anonymous calls, simple yet chilling messages. For your own safety, forget about this. And so, like many secrets in this city, her story was buried under the dust of oblivion. The mansion still stood tall, majestic, and imposing, an inviolable symbol. The parties continued. Antiques were still exchanged under the sparkling lights, and Rick Harison, he still smiled on television as if nothing had ever cracked beneath the surface of his glow. But in the heart of this city, small cracks were spreading. In the dark corners of bars, in whispered conversations, they spoke of her. The nameless woman who dared challenge an empire with bare hands and a fearless heart. No one knew exactly what she had sent before disappearing. But somewhere on the internet, fragmented files, blurry images, and cryptic descriptions hinting at a horrifying truth continued to leak, like underground streams that could never be sealed forever. And in the late hours, when the neon lights on Fremont Street dimmed, some people looked up at the pitch-black sky and whispered, "She didn't disappear. She became the storm they couldn't control." Because the truth, once planted in the ground, never truly dies. It just waits for the day it erupts, burning everything false to the ground. Beneath the bright neon lights, the ashes silently gathered. A man, who had thought he was just there to fix a few wires in Rick Harrison's tunnel, had no idea he was stepping straight into a nest of vipers filled with horrifying secrets. What he witnessed with his own eyes, the secret deals, the testimonies of betrayal, the ghosts of the past, not only haunted his long nights but quietly turned him into a hunted man. This is not a story about antiques. This is a story about an underground world run by fear and blood oaths. If you think this is just a simple journey, prepare yourself. The truth this time will burn everything you've ever trusted. Don't look away, because with each passing moment, you'll sink deeper into a nightmare that has never been told. These are the perspectives from my vantage point. I don't offer final judgments, but if the following theories prove true, Rick Harrison's story will not end here. Chapter 1. Into the Beast's Veins. There are places born without light, hidden corners where time seems to slow down and the air grows heavy, as if everything is being drained of its life force. That was the first feeling when the man, whose name history would never record, stepped into the secret tunnel of Rick Harrison. The initial task seemed simple enough. Check the ventilation system, replace old wiring, and clean up some rarely used areas. A routine technical job in a mansion renowned for its vast collection of antiques and extravagant parties. He had once been a fan of Pawn Stars, seeing Rick as a symbol of the passion for collecting and commercializing memories. But all that naive belief shattered the moment the heavy steel door slammed shut behind him. The electronic lock clicked coldly. Ahead, there was only a long, narrow hallway. Faint white LED lights cast sharp beams across the rough concrete floor. No sound, no music, only the echo of his own footsteps, like a whispered reminder that from here on he had entered a world that not everyone was meant to see. He followed the hallway, the palm of his hand lightly brushing against the cold wall. Every few meters there was a small metal door, unmarked, only identified by lifeless numbers. He silently committed them to memory. A12, A13, B7. A maze-like map slowly formed in his mind, a safety measure in case he needed to find his way back out. In the first room he was assigned to check. What caught his attention wasn't the faulty electrical system as described. Instead, it was the metal shelves stacked with wooden boxes, each sealed carefully. Each box had a small handwritten label: "Private collection. Do not open." A chill ran down his spine. There was something about the way the boxes were neatly arranged, the way the words were written, that made the air feel suffocating. Curiosity killed the cat. The old proverb echoed in his head like a warning bell. He pressed on, moving deeper. The tunnel twisted like veins underground, leading to larger rooms reinforced with steel. There, in the dim light, he saw outdated surveillance equipment, analog cameras, tape recorders, thermal binoculars, all covered in the dust of time but still showing signs of recent use. A sense of unease crept into his chest. This wasn't just a storage area. This was an observation post, a control center. By chance, he noticed an unusual section of the wall, a steel plate slightly misaligned with the surrounding frame. With the instincts of someone who had worked in the technical field for years, he immediately recognized it as a hidden door. He rummaged through his toolkit, found a small screwdriver, and gently pried the edge of the steel plate. After a few minutes of tense silence, the plate popped off, revealing a dark recess deep within the wall. Inside, a small metal box was tightly screwed shut. On the lid, bold black letters were embossed: "Property of RH Archive. Level 3, access required." He gently touched the cold surface. A small decision could determine everything. He knew he shouldn't open it, but like an irresistible force, he found a way to unlock it. Inside the box were thick files, a few small memory cards, and an old cassette tape. The label on the cassette simply read 2 words: "Negotiations." His hand trembled, not from the fear of being caught, but because his intuition told him that if he listened to the contents of that tape, his life would never be the same again. The sound of footsteps in the distance startled him. Someone was getting closer. He quickly shoved everything into his backpack, sealed the steel plate back in place, and hurriedly hid in a small alcove in the tunnel. In the suffocating darkness, his heart pounded as if it would burst from his chest. He held his breath, listening to the footsteps of the stranger pass by, each step ringing like a hammer strike on the fragile willpower still left in him. Once he was certain it was safe, he made his way along the wall, searching for a path back to the original entrance. Each step was a battle against the fear that surged through his veins. He realized this was not a tunnel for storing antiques. This was the artery of a monster, a colossal entity that existed parallel to the outside world, swallowing truths the public was never meant to know. And he, an outsider, had unknowingly wandered into its heart. Chapter 2: Relics of Broken Oaths. Night fell over the streets of Las Vegas like a thin veil covered in dust. But deep underground, far beneath that lavish mansion, time seemed to stand still, leaving only the heavy breath of cold concrete walls. The man silently moved deeper into the maze, where everything seemed to have been born to be forgotten. He knew he was taking an enormous risk, but he also understood that what was hidden here was more important than his own safety. After evading the patrol area, he followed a side passage that led to a dimly lit storage room. This room was unlike any typical administrative storage. Here, each wooden shelf was filled with strange antique items: pocket watches, Ancient swords, small stone statues carved with symbols of unknown origin. They were wrapped in black fabric, each item seemingly sleeping a cursed sleep. He gently pulled away one of the cloths. Beneath the layer of dust from time, a golden mask appeared, its intricate details so lifelike it was strangely unsettling. The ancient patterns seemed to vibrate under the faint light of the flashlight. In the corner of the cloth, a small leather tag read, in shaky handwriting, "Acquired through private transaction, 2011. Origin unknown." And that was just the first item he touched. Next, he found an ancient Japanese sword, likely from the Muromachi period, the kind Rick Harison had once showcased on Pawn Stars with a flashy sales pitch. This is one of the finest examples we've ever seen, but here, a piece of paper attached to it read, "Smuggled through private collection. Pending processing. Smuggling." Cold sweat began to bead on his temples. Each of those scrawled lines felt like a sharp knife, cutting deep into the glamorous image he had once trusted. He continued to inspect and slowly began to notice a pattern. Many of the items that had appeared in famous episodes had murky origins, unclear provenance, or were traded through secret channels. But what made him pause wasn't an antique. It was an old wooden chest tucked away in the darkest corner. The lock was rusted, no label, no paperwork. He gently pried open the chest with a crowbar, and inside was a scene he would never forget. Not gold or silver, not antiques, but copies of agreements, handwritten letters, and photos of secret transactions, deals involving favors, handshakes bought with the promise of silence. Many of the letters bore signatures he recognized instantly, prominent figures in the collecting world, appraisers, and even faces who had appeared alongside Rick Harison on television. He flipped through an old letter, the paper yellowed with age. The trembling words read, "You promised to protect me, Rick. You broke that promise. Now they are hunting me." He closed the chest, his heart pounding in his chest. Everything here told the same story. Promises of loyalty betrayed, secret deals broken, lost souls abandoned in a maze of power where greed was the only religion. No one here was innocent. And Rick Harison, the man once trusted by all of America, hailed as a model of success, was no exception. He stepped back toward the door. The walls seemed to close in, exhaling a musty, suffocating odor. On his way out, he couldn't help but glance back one last time. This wasn't just antiques. They were witnesses to an underground world where honor was auctioned off, where oaths were sold like scrap metal, and he, with nothing but his own eyes, had become an unwilling witness. In the cold hallway, his shadow stretched under the faint light, blending with the shadows that had existed here long before he arrived and would continue to haunt those foolish enough to step inside. Chapter 3: The Vault of Unspoken Words. The air in the tunnel grew so suffocating that each breath felt like a cold blade slicing through his throat. The man walked slowly on the icy concrete floor, his heavy shoes soaked with sweat-soaked socks. Every survival instinct inside him screamed, "Turn back! Retreat! Don't go any deeper!" But like a person pulled into the fate of his own making, he continued forward, drawn by an invisible force to a place where reason had abandoned him. At the end of the hallway, A large steel door blocked his path. It wasn't locked. It was simply shut, as though it didn't want to be disturbed, but didn't mind letting anyone brave enough go further. He placed his hand on the handle, feeling the cold seep through his skin. A slow heartbeat, a deep breath, then the heavy door creaked open. The room before him, if it could be called a room, resembled a secret storage bunker from the Cold War. Low ceiling, steel walls, and dozens of shelves packed with files filling the space. No light, only the beam from his phone's flashlight casting trembling streaks across countless files, cassette tapes, memory cards, and storage devices. He stepped inside, the only sound his pounding heart. He reached for the nearest file, its cover scrawled with the words, "Internal Agreement, Top Secret." Inside, the words were as cold as a blade, a list of fired employees with NDA clauses, non-disclosure agreements, secret payments to individuals who threatened to expose sensitive information, internal asset dispute records, including matters directly involving the Harrison family, details never mentioned in the media. He trembled as he flipped to the next page. Another thick, heavy file titled Illegal Acquisition, Pawn Stars Memorabilia. Inside was detailed evidence showing that some of the items traded on the reality show had no legal provenance. Many were listed as seized through private agreements, meaning taken from unregistered private collections in exchange for cash and silence. At the end of the file, a shaky handwritten note read, "Ensure all traces are erased before being made public. Reputation must remain intact at all costs." He felt as if the world was collapsing beneath his feet. This was no longer a matter of vague ethics or small, secretive transactions. This was a fully operational structure, a system that thrived on suppressing the truth, silencing those who knew too much, and betraying the public's trust to maintain a facade of glittering perfection. He continued searching. In a locked drawer, he found something unusual. A small external hard drive wrapped in protective plastic, labeled surveillance footage, authorized personnel only. His hand trembled as he plugged the hard drive into a mobile reader. What appeared on the screen made his blood run cold. The secret surveillance footage captured negotiations in the basement area, where valuable antiques were exchanged in off-the-record deals. The faces of many prominent figures were clearly visible: traders, appraisers, even a few people who had appeared on Pawn Stars. One particular video caught his attention. Rick Harrison, in a dark suit, was seen signing a contract with a man whose face was obscured. An agreement with no public light, no official record. There was no dialogue, only a hoarse laugh echoing down the empty hallway. That sound was colder than a scream. The man suddenly realized that he was holding secrets that could destroy Rick Harrison's career, even bring down the reality TV empire built around his image. And because of that, he, an anonymous repairman, had become the silently condemned the moment he opened that door. He gathered all the documents he could carry: the hard drive, a few files, and some hastily snapped photos with his phone. Not enough to expose everything, but enough to ignite a storm. As he returned to the main hallway, he looked up and, for the first time, noticed a small security camera at the end of the corridor, embedded in the wall. The red light was blinking. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding erratically. In this dark underground world, he knew that what he was carrying was not just evidence. It was a death sentence, hanging over him, waiting to be executed. And from that moment on, he no longer belonged to the world above ground. He had become a part of the vault of unspoken words, where cries for help are suffocated, where the truth is buried beneath the coldest and most impenetrable concrete. Chapter 4, Marked by Darkness. The steel door slammed shut behind him with a heavy clang, like a death sentence. The man dashed down the dark hallway, pressing against the wall like a wounded animal, desperately searching for a way to escape his pursuers. The blinking red light of the security camera still followed him, unwavering. He didn't run. He couldn't. One rushed step would end everything in an instant. He moved steadily, trying to mimic the casual pace of a maintenance worker, hoping that anyone watching would lose interest. But deep down, he knew he had been marked. Passing through a small emergency exit at the end of the hall, he made his way up a service stairwell that led to the backyard. The night outside was bitterly cold, the smell of damp grass and earth mingling with the rust of the locked iron gate. He tilted his head, looking up at the sky, a solid black void with no stars, as if the entire universe had turned its back on him. No one intervened as he left the mansion grounds, no alarm sounded, no guards rushed out. But it was the silence that sent a chill down his spine. The silence of a predator leisurely circling its prey, confident that there was no need to hurry. Once he reached the main road, he blended into the sparse crowd of Las Vegas by night. He hailed a cheap taxi, asking to drive around before taking him to a small motel where no identification was required. In the shabby room, he slid down the door, curling into a fetal position as if to shield himself from something invisible closing in around him. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. He immediately turned it off, removed the battery, and tossed it into the corner of the room like a ticking bomb. In the darkness, he panted heavily, the sound of his blood rushing in his ears drowning out everything else. A deafening roar. The air in the room felt thick, almost frozen. From the crack under the door, he had a chilling sensation, as if hundreds of eyes were glued to him. In the dead of night, when exhaustion forced him to lie down on the creaky spring mattress, a soft knock echoed at the door. 3 short, decisive knocks. He jolted upright, holding his breath. No one spoke, no one entered. Only a deadly silence hung in the air. The next morning, he left the motel through the back exit, slipping into an old jacket he had bought from a thrift store to conceal his identity. He knew his time was running out. Everywhere he went, a gas station, a small diner, even a public park. Unfamiliar eyes passed over him, then vanished. No one approached. No one said a word. But the feeling of being watched clung to him, like a shadow that couldn't be erased. Once, at a shabby gas station on the outskirts of the city, just after he paid, a sleek black car parked in a hidden corner suddenly turned on its headlights. The blinding light temporarily blinded him before the car silently drove away. No license plate, no explanation, just leaving behind a trail of cold, proleptic dread. That night, he returned to his motel room, gripping the hard drive and the files he had taken from the room beneath the mansion. They were all he had, and also the very thing that was slowly killing him. The man knew well that Rick Harison was not some innocent pawn shop owner. He stood at the top of a secret power network with long-reaching arms, reaching into the darkest corners of the city. And now, he, an ordinary repairman, had become an uncontrollable variable in that system. He sat by the window, staring out into the deep night. Perhaps they didn't need to kill him in the usual sense. Perhaps just the fear, the invisible pursuit, the inescapable pressure, a silent death in the mind before the body even collapses. Curiosity killed the cat. The saying echoed in his head again, this time sounding like an obituary, but then he clenched his fist. If he had to die, he vowed to die with the truth in his hands. Not as a fugitive, not as a failure. At all costs, he would find a way to ensure the truth was not buried. Even as the shadows outside lurked, waiting for his moment of inattention to devour him. Chapter 5. The Covenant of Silence. The final morning in the old town dawned in a somber gray. A thin mist crept across the ground like waiting ghosts, obscuring every trace of the dark night. The man leaned against the doorframe of his motel room, his gaze empty as he looked at the pale sky. In his backpack, the evidence he had traded his life for remained silent. The external hard drive, the old files, the hastily taken photographs, and the audio recordings extracted from the secret surveillance system in Rick Harrison's tunnel. All of it burned in his palm like small, smoldering fires, insidious but inextinguishable. He knew today he had to decide. There was no more time to flee. There was nowhere left to hide. He pulled the rickety chair closer to the old wooden table. On the table sat a faded laptop connected to a public Wi-Fi network. His trembling fingers hovered over the keyboard, opening the anonymous email he had prepared days ago. Recipients: a number of independent journalists, several international investigative organizations, and a few old friends, people reckless enough to dare seek the truth. Just one click of a button, just one click and the whole world would know. He sat there, his hand suspended above the keyboard, listening to the old clock ticking like a hammer against his temples. A voice echoed in his mind. Silence is survival. Curiosity is death. He remembered the strange men, the anonymous black cars, the glacial glances that had swept over him on the street, the sleepless nights in the cheap motel room, his heart pounding wildly at every small sound in the hallway. If he released this information, they would not let him live long enough to see the consequences. If he remained silent, perhaps, just perhaps, he would be spared. He clenched his hand into a fist. His fingernails dug into his palm until they drew blood. Fear tore at his chest. But beneath that layer, something else ignited, a fierce rage. He recalled the antiques lauded on television as symbols of integrity. But beneath that veneer lay deceit, theft, betrayal. He recalled the desperate letters from people who had once trusted, only to be swallowed by silence. He recalled his own gaze reflected in the mirror each morning, weary, depleted, but never bowed. He understood this was no longer just a choice between life and death. This was a choice between becoming an anonymous ghost or an unforgettable curse. With a long breath, he opened the attached files. He typed the final lines. If you receive this email, know that the truth is real and it must never be buried again. Then he pressed send. The instant he did, the laptop screen went dark. The electric light in the room flickered once, then stabilized. He knew they had found him. Perhaps in just a few minutes, this door would burst open. Perhaps in just a few minutes, it would all be over. But he had no regrets, because for the first time in weeks of living like a blind man in the dark, he felt a flicker of light within him. Even if his body vanished, even if his voice was silenced, what he had sent would spread like wildfire, consuming every layer of deceit. He stood up, straightened his collar, and smoothed down his disheveled hair. As the sounds in the hallway began, heavy footsteps, the whisper of cold metal, he closed his eyes, breathed slowly, and surrendered to the final stillness. An agreement that required no signature, a silent covenant, but immortal. Epilogue, where secrets bury the living. That day, no one saw him again. No one heard the hurried footsteps, the ragged breaths in the dim corridors. No one saw the resolute gaze burning like embers beneath a layer of cold ash. That man had vanished, like a fragile wisp of smoke dissolving into the air. No announcements, no funeral, no trace. Only whispered stories passed from mouth to ear in the old corners of Las Vegas, that some unknown man had dared to step into forbidden territory, Rick Harrison's secret tunnel, and never emerged the same. Somewhere far away, beyond the gaudy neon lights and the cacophony of traffic, a small data package silently spread through secure servers, decrypted by those already accustomed to living outside the lines of the law. They found inside shaky video clips, copies of top-secret agreements, scribbled notes carrying the desperation of someone betrayed. No names, no leads, only the truth. And like every inconvenient truth, the outside world responded with silence. Not a single prime-time news report mentioned it. No sensational headlines appeared in the papers, just whispers in small communities, anonymous posts on locked-down forums, message threads that vanished after 24 hours. He saw things that couldn't be spoken. He knew too much. He chose the truth and paid for it with his very existence. At lavish parties, the elite still raised their glasses. On reality TV, Rick Harrison still appeared with his warm smile, still buying and selling strange artifacts, still telling history with that captivating tone. The surface of the world remained undisturbed. Only those who had once seen through its polished facade could sense the tiny cracks quietly spreading, little by little, under the weight of secrets left unspoken. And in the dry Nevada desert, where the wind carried dust and ancient curses, a small metal box lay buried deep beneath the barren earth. Inside it was the whole story, a silent scream from a soul that refused to surrender, a promise made to oneself. One day, the desert will speak. One day, a random gust of wind will sweep away the sand that covers it. A careless hand will unearth the box, and the truth will rise from where it was buried, like a wildflower blooming from forgotten graves. Unstoppable, unquenchable, unkillable. Because the truth, once sown into the earth, will always find a way to bloom, no matter how deep the darkness. That man, the one whose name history will never record, is gone. But his choice, both brave and desperate, endures. It remains, buried with the secrets, and lives on in the whispers of the night. After everything came to light, I haven't been able to shake the images and feelings I experienced at Rick Harrison's mansion. The children, the dark secrets, It was all too unbelievable. And even though I've left, the fear still haunts me. We can never truly know what's happening behind those closed doors. If you found this story shocking, don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember to like and subscribe to stay updated on future videos about untold secrets. Thanks for watching, and always remember, the truth finds a way to reveal itself, whether we want it to or not. Stay with us as we uncover even more chilling stories.